I won't attempt to pretend to have the same humour as that previous gentleman. Brilliant. I'm going to actually speak from the heart, given the fact that, as I see it, all the information and the evidence and everything seems to be already out there. So I'm here today to give a voice to my 4-year-old son, my wife that already suffers with breathing difficulties. I also have 4 brothers, 3 sisters-in-law, 5 nephews and nieces that all breathe in the Trafford air on a daily basis. I could go on to include friends, colleagues, neighbours, the community as a whole. However, I want to focus just for a moment on my son. I'm not a scientist, nor am I an NIMBYist. And therefore, from what I've read and heard, it seemingly boils down to 2 key things for me: trust and democracy. When in the future my son asks me, where were you when the plans were being hatched to build the incinerator, what will I say? I believed in local democracy and put my faith in my elected representatives. Surely a unanimous cross-party rejection would be enough. I believed that campaigning with other local residents would make the difference. I believed that ultimately the risks were so plain to see that no reasonable person would make such an irreversible decision that affects so many people's lives, unless possibly they don't have to live in the area themselves. I guess I ultimately believe that safety would ultimately trump profits. So then, if he asks me, and I say if, why was it built? It's at this point that I have no answers. It's also at this point that the democratic values that I was raised to believe in fail me. Frankly, there's nothing in the plans that convinces me that Peel can be trusted to look after my son's best interests, and by extension, the rest of the Trafford community. I therefore petition you to think long and hard beyond the narrow technicalities that lawyers would have you focus on, and consider the bigger picture in your judgments and recommendations. Please allow me to tell my son the story where democracy and human life matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Print that off, please. Yeah, that's fine, but if you the council, they'll make sure. Okay. Okay, Stephen Grove, that would be. Stephen Grove, Stephen? Anybody know Stephen Grove? Trading places. No, okay, well, it seems he's not here. If he can come, if there's been any problem, there will be other opportunities for him to speak to me tomorrow. But move on to Councillor Dolores Sullivan, please. No? Oh, yes. Good afternoon, Councillor.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. My name is Dolores O'Sullivan. I'm a local resident and Trafford councillor, and I'm here today to express my concerns and to appeal to the public inquiry and the Secretary of State to reject this appeal regarding Davyhulme renewable energy plant. For the past couple of years, like most councillors in Trafford, I have been inundated with emails from concerned residents and friends. They cannot understand, nor can I, why these developers are hell-bent on going ahead with this scheme against the wishes of the council and the residents who live here, and who will be directly affected if there is an accident or so-called experts get it wrong. These constituents have put their faith in us as elected members to represent their views and concerns. This is the reason I am here today, to plead their case, and their genuine fear of the perception of deterioration to their health if this development is allowed. We are all aware of the poor air quality in the area at the moment, and the pollution from traffic, which is heavily congested at peak times of the day, miles of queues on motorways and surrounding roads on a daily basis. And then there are the gridlocks for hours on end when no one can move. During match days lead up to Christmas, sales after Christmas, or accidents on the motorways. How much more of an increase will there be during the construction, the incoming of fuel and wood, or the disposal of the fly ash, when we have all the lorries flying backwards and forwards on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis? Why would someone add to the already heavily congested roads by building an incinerator here? Has there been consideration given to one of those lorries carrying fly ash if it had an accident? Would the public be exposed to toxic waste? Is there going to be a risk to pollution to the local water? At the consultation recently, the Environment Agency said there would be an insignificant increase in pollution in the area, probably around 3%. This is an already heavily populated and an air quality management area. Why would any increase be calculated as insignificant? Local people are worried about the effects this plant will have on their health. Compared to the rest of the country, we already have a reduced life expectancy with high death rates for respiratory and cardiovascular disease, such as asthma and bronchitis. Myself and my daughter developed asthma around 10 years after moving into the area. How can we prove or disprove its pollution in the air? But I am the only one of a family of 8 children to have developed this disease. How can we measure the long-term health effects on the local population, or prove it is harmful to health if this plant is built? It may take years for the effects to be noticed, and then the harm will be done. Can and will we really put profit before people? I can't think of a single reason this plant would benefit the local area. On the contrary, it will have a devastating effect in the vicinity. Local people have told me if this incinerator is built, they will move elsewhere. That will affect house prices in the area. Business may decide not to visit the area, and local economy may suffer. The visual amenities of the area will be affected. I don't think it can be hidden behind some trees. What about the Localism Act? A government blueprint where consideration is given to the wishes of the local authority and the communities. The people have spoken. Why are people not listening? The area around Ernston, Davyhulme and Flixton is heavily populated and is surrounded by a vast array of factories, power stations, ethane plants, paper mill, food factories, chemical works, commercial and industrial buildings in Trafford Park, Carrington and Partington. One of the largest shopping malls in Europe, together with hospitals, schools, clinics and elderly residential homes, not forgetting the sweet-smelling sewage works. I guess the people think enough is enough. Why are the public so worried? Why are they not ensured by our government bodies set up to protect us? Maybe it's because we've been let down time and again. If it doesn't meet the criteria, we just move the goalposts. To conclude, nothing is fail-safe. We only have to remember Chernobyl and Fukushima to remember the disastrous consequences of what can happen. Plants do fail, operators do make mistakes, and there are cover-ups. It could be a terrorist target. Incinerators have been known to spontaneously combust. This could be catastrophic if there was to be a fire in such a heavily populated area, so close to the motorway. with devastating effects if smoke clouds were to drift across the carriageways. No one can guarantee that this wouldn't explode and toxins released into the atmosphere, with health put at risk or even deaths. The effects of 60 plus lorries a day, which will be 7 days a week, will have an additional congestion, pollution and possibility of accidents or negligent spill. A greatly reduced chimney stack or the danger both of contamination, to mention a few reasons why this plant should not be allowed to be built in this area, so close to so many residential homes. Thank you for your time, Inspector.
Thanks very much. Julie Sullivan, please.
My name is Judith Sullivan and I am a resident of Flixton. I am Mrs. Average in an average town. The Council for Peel described Ernstone as prosperous. It is not Hale Cheshire, and although there must be one or two, I don't know any millionaires who live in the area. For anyone here who does not live in Ernstone, I should like to explain what Ernstonians are like in order that you may understand what is in our hearts and minds and exactly what perception of harm means to us. When I married in 1972, I came to live in Flixton in the house which we have occupied for 40 years. We have 2 daughters, both married, and 3 grandchildren aged 7 months, 2 and 8. Our friends are those of 40 years standing. Our lives are invested in our family, home and friends, and our roots go very deep. Before the boundaries were redrawn, our address was Ernstone, Lancashire. Our family and friends and most Ernstonians are of the what you see is what you get variety. Lancashire people are renowned for calling a spade, as you have seen with the very clever gentleman that spoke earlier. Therefore, when a proposal arises for an incinerator to be sited in Davyhulme, and we see that it is called Barton Renewable Energy Plant, we know that the PR people have come along and said that Davyhulme is a residential area, so we'd better call it Barton Renewable Energy Plant. I've lived in Ernstone all those years. I don't really know where Barton exactly is. I do know, however, that the plant will be sited in Davyhulme, and nowhere in the title do we see the word incinerator, although that's what it is. An estate agent told my friend when she was selling her house that Ernstone is unusually parochial and that a large proportion of the sales he handles are for those people moving house within the area. We look after our own and work hard for what we have, and that is part of why it is such a good place to live. From many of Peel's quotations in the press, I detect a certain contempt for the average resident like me. On a BBC documentary referred to earlier, an executive from Peel said that the residents simply don't understand it, and I imagine at some point that will be reiterated during these proceedings. I should like to answer that now. In the food chain, I am a snail and Mr. Eric Pickles is a lion. However, this snail and lion have 3 things in common. Number 1, neither of us is an expert in biomass incineration or air quality, although he is the one who will make the decision. 2, neither of us is stupid. And number 3, we should both look at the advice of the experts and make our conclusions based upon that. There is a wealth of information to be found on the internet, well researched and from eminent and respected bodies. My husband, who is 70, was shift engineer at the British Gas Power Plant at Partington for 10 years, and on most of those shifts he was the engineer in charge of the whole plant. His career spans over 30 years of running chemical plants, and he latterly inspected plant as a health and safety officer. He is now retired. Unfortunately, he cannot be here today to tell you his opinion, as he has bronchitis, but with your permission, sir, he's asked me to say this. All chemical plants use raw materials and fuels which are very strictly specified and quality controlled. This will not apply to much of the feedstock entering the phrase rubbish and poison in, worse rubbish and poison out, springs to mind, and this plant therefore is not green. It's also worth noting that the Green Party oppose it. The technology is not the best available, says my husband, with a furniture temperature which is too low and inadequate bath filtration for the purpose. It is his opinion that this plant is a recipe set for disaster and a terrible legacy for our children and grandchildren. In an already overpolluted area, one toxic molecule more is one too many and totally unacceptable. And I am very angry, and I'm just going to have a drink of water. For years during its rebuilding, Incinerator was like a bomb site. I used to visit regularly to try and help the surviving traders, but it was usually fairly deserted and a very depressing experience. What kept all of us going was the thought that when it was complete, Urmston would be a better place to live than it was before. We know that Peel will receive a lot of money in a grant from the government for this plant, as they already do for many others. Public perception. This seems to be being belittled a little in these proceedings. People discuss this proposal endlessly in the tea rooms at church, cafes, the shops and at home, always worrying and giving the evidence we're seeing and have seen not without reason. Some people have said that it is useless to fight such a large and powerful company. Depressingly, and I hope this is not the case, this may turn out to be true. Those people who think those things will simply say that this company is indeed too rich and powerful to be stopped. I must say I do not believe that, or I wouldn't be sitting here today. At the consultative meeting of the Environment Agency, my husband and I asked their representative why they were not working to reduce the pollution that is already above the limit in an air quality management area, as opposed to sanctioning more. He was struck speechless for a minute and then said what is being proposed is within the law and therefore it is obliged to grant the licence or Peel would sue. It seems to me then that this licence has been granted with a loaded gun to the head and in terms of evidence here should be discounted. He also stated that the chimney height, which you've gone over but I'll reiterate, is not ideal, but again within the law. A licence should, to me, only be granted if what they are doing is the right thing. Otherwise, it simply proves that money can buy justice and defeat democracy. And I think it's Dickens, I'm not sure, but sometimes the law is an ass. My first job was working at Turner's Asbestos Cement Company in 1968. Our tea mats were rough offcuts of asbestos. We had to walk on rainy days a third of a mile through the factory in order to get to the canteen. And often the air was so thick with asbestos dust we could hardly see. Similarly, a few years ago, many people in this room would be smoking. The law has simply not yet caught up with the technology. The company's ability to sue because what they are doing is within the law is certainly no reason for granting a licence for this. I am sure we shall hear testimony from Peel's own experts. However, where expert opinion is so divided, and this plant being so unnecessary, it is clear that the decision must rest with the case for safety first. For 5 years, after I retired from my main job, I worked for a funeral director in Erneston. We had become already very concerned about the high rate of deaths in the 30 to 50 age range, and we all commented upon it. Now, people die. It must, to me, it's something that we're ingesting. For the past 2 years, I've had to live with 2 very strong emotions, anger and fear. And both of these feelings are not groundless, but arise from a knowledge which in some ways I wish I did not have. My dilemma is this. If the plant is passed, do I sell my house at a reduced rate and move to another area which might itself incur one of these incinerators? The fabric of my life here cannot be replaced. The other option, of course, is to stay, and in my lifetime never know peace of mind again. The awful knowledge about the potential health effects cannot be erased. I go to sleep with it, and I wake up with it. And for everybody here, that is my view on what perception of harm means. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Okay, then I have Councillor Michael Cordingley. Good afternoon. Yeah, that's fine when you're ready.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Councillor Mike Cordingley, a councillor for Gorse Hill Ward. Gorse Hill Ward stretches from the Barton Swing Aqueduct in the west of Trafford to this very stadium. So we cover a huge region in the north of Trafford. It probably covers about 90% of Trafford Park, and its residential neighbourhoods are Lostock, Northern Stretford and Gorse Hill itself. Lostock, which is our most westerly residential area, is bounded by the M60, and as such sits very much in the air quality management area designated by the authorities. As councillor, I've received many, hundreds of representations about this application. Residents are only too aware of the poor air quality in their area. The consensus view of residents is that the plant's location upwind will add emissions to their environment and that this location is in the wrong place. There's a dissatisfaction that the air quality management area seems to mean nothing. We heard yesterday that EU targets are showing no signs of being hit. Residents know this, and they know that it's their health that's been jeopardised. And then they see this application, which adds to that cumulative effect. They see there's no good reason for this location to have been chosen, no special reason. They see the additional pollutants, and they've called for its refusal. Nothing has been quite so unifying as the opposition to this plant, across parties, across neighbourhoods, across all areas of Trafford. There's a genuine concern for health based upon reputable research, and I believe Trafford's Planning Committee were absolutely right to give this the weight they did. I can only add that the concern about health has increased as time has gone by since the application. Residents feel justifiably and hugely let down by the Environment Agency in the conduct of their permitting process. Regardless of the decision to permit, I'm still stunned that the Environment Agency allowed people to queue for a consultation event without any intention to take notes of what was said. I find that absolutely outrageous, and if anything, it undermines people's confidence that their health views will be taken into account. I believe that all possibility of reassuring residents that this plant will not adversely affect health has long since passed. Residents are now certain that it will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then Councillor Lawrence Walsh.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lawrence Walsh. I'm the local councillor. I'm from the same ward as Councillor Cordon, who spoke just earlier. I am the Labour Group spokesman on the Planning Committee at Trafford Borough Council. I have 12 years' experience on the Planning Committee, and I've never encountered an application which has raised so much concern with residents. Everyone is aware of the reasons for the application was rejected, i.e. the chimney stack and the perceived risk to health. I am well versed in judging applications fairly and squarely. The Planning Committee is not a popularity group. If we feel an application is worthy of approval, we will grant it, no matter what the consequences. The area around the application is subject to daily pollution monitoring, and it is no little matter that this application will add to this pollution. In another location, less populated, in another area, less polluted, such an application might be acceptable. If the application were to go ahead, I have grave concerns for the future of the area. It is the duty of the local authority to protect the area it represents. The economy of the local area cannot be disregarded. Planning applications are granted to promote opportunity and facilities to the residents. In other words, to improve the area they are based in. Benefits must not outweigh the difficulties. I believe the granting of this application will seriously damage the future prosperity of this area. Difficulties in this application do outweigh benefits, and I give you this statement purely on the grounds that the application was rejected by the Planning Committee, that the reasons were entirely legal and proper, and that the reasons, the chimney stack and the perceived risk to health are absolutely valid and bear any scrutiny that the inspector or the honourable gentleman can give to it. Thank you, Inspector.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's everybody on my list for today. We've got other public sessions on the Thursday the 22nd of November 2012 in the evening, and that's from 6:30 to 9:30, and I've got a list of people who want to speak then, and then Friday the 23rd of November in the morning, and again I've got a list of people who want to speak then. So, if there's nobody here who hasn't spoken who would like to speak now, that's all we close for the afternoon and for the week. No, okay. Well, the inquiry resumes on Tuesday here at 9:30, and we're going to hear PL Energy witnesses next week, and we're going to start with Steve. That's great. Okay. Yeah. So, if there's nothing else, I wish you all a good weekend, and see some of you on Tuesday morning. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.